Good morning and welcome to the July 19th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting for the Leeds Summit School District. We have a long agenda today, and so we'll get started. But prior to that, just a couple of comments about our agenda. Typically, if you've participated in our meetings in the past, you'll notice that our first initial agenda items, the contracts $15,000 and less and contracts greater than $15,000, have moved down the agenda. That's to accommodate a few of our staff members who are attending professional development today. Marzano Professional Development in St. Louis, we want to give them an opportunity to go first so they can get to their sessions. Additionally, I'm having a little bit of technology issues today, and by chance, if I disappear during the meeting, Mr. Holder will take the baton and run with it from there. So once again, welcome, and we'll begin 1.01. Dr. Bonison, turn it over to you.
Good morning, board members and district leadership. I'm excited to talk about this item. With the MCI airport, the brand new airport, and FIFA World Cup and then NFL draft coming to Kansas City, we have seen the change of the face of the hotel, tourism and recreation management industry in KC and how that's growing. And so there are many high wage, high demand opportunities in hospitality, tourism and recreation management. And so the STA Hospitality Tourism and Recreation Management Program will be housed at Paradise Park, and it will help prepare students for these exciting opportunities that are just beginning to blossom in the Kansas City area in a big way. And so there will be multiple entry points for these students. They will be able to have earn and learn opportunities, internship opportunities, certifications, and college prep and more. And so the hospitality, tourism, and recreation management students, which is a mouthful, we say HTRM is the kind of the short version. They'll earn certifications through the American Hotel and Lodging Educational Institute, which is an industry standard. So they're going to earn 100 hours that are internship hours and be able to get dual credit as well. So as a part of all of that, and to bolster the recreation management component of this program, we're repairing the batting cages at Paradise Park that had become in disarray through COVID and as the Paradise Park amusement park closed down. So as you see that the cost for the installation is $31,817 for that installation. But it will open up opportunities for those students to learn and to be able to learn in an authentic way. Are there any questions about this installation?
Dr. Bonison, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You bet. Moving on to item 1.02, the CTE pathways. Shannon Booth.
Good morning. Yes, the Cengage CTE Pathways is a program that we've been using for several years in our computer business applications 1 and 2 courses, as well as our accounting courses. It provides simulations that our students can go through as they're working their way through the curriculum in all 3 of those courses at all of our high schools. So this is just a request to purchase those licenses that we need to continue utilizing this resource for those courses. Any questions?
All right, Shannon, thank you so much. Moving on to 1.03. Jeremy and Shannon, I think you're taking this one as well.
Yes. The NetLab server, every year, this is a server that is housed over at Summit Technology Academy, and it is utilized as part of our cybersecurity and networking courses. Every year we work and maintain this NetLab server. it was brought to our attention last year that if we didn't provide a significant upgrade due to the changes in technology, it would no longer function. And so this request is to provide that upgrade for our NetLab server so that we can continue to run that for cybersecurity and network courses. Any questions?
Right. Thank you. 1.04, study.com resources. And looks like, Shannon, you're moving on.
Yes, it's me again. Okay, so study.com, this is a request for a new resource. Our family consumer science teachers have been looking for a supplemental resource, again, that provides some simulations for their courses. What's nice about this program is it is open for all CTE courses. So our goal is it was reviewed and vetted by our fashion design classes and our Pro Start classes for the family consumer sciences. But this year, we're also going to look into what the program offers for some of our other CTE classes as well, because once we purchase the licenses for family consumer sciences, it's open for all buildings and all students. And so for this year, this request is for specifically for our family consumer science courses, as they haven't had a resource in the past. And this is the one that, after vetting several, was the one that rose to the top. Any questions?
All right. Thank you. Moving on to 1.05, Center for the Collaborative Classroom Spelling. Dr. Kinney or Dr. Barger?
Yep, this is good morning. Just this ask is for, we already use the collaborative classroom in our K-5 ELA curriculum in our classrooms. And so this is just asking for the spelling component for grades 3 through 5. And that includes our SPED classrooms too.
Dr. Kinney, I think that's you speaking. I'm on Zoom like video, so I can't on my phone. So I'm sorry if it's not right, but
No.
I did have a quick question. So is this curriculum, like core curriculum, or is this just a supplemental resource if the teachers want to incorporate this into 3 through 5?
So it's kind of both. And so we're going to have teachers use it for as much as they feel comfortable. It pretty much mirrors collaborative classroom setup. I have not seen it personally, but we have some teachers that are currently using it in kind of small places. And so this would just be making sure that we have purchased it for every student for grades 3 through 5.
Okay. I mean, I think it's great because I think definitely the spelling curriculum has been lacking, having, had kids in that grade. Question about the contract for the PD. The PD says it's only for 35, for one session for up to 35. And I mean, we have certainly more staff than that in those grades across our 18 buildings. So is that enough? Like, why is it not for every teacher?
So that's a great question. It's really, we're going to use it a little bit to answer some questions, but Ann Sticknoth, our ELA curriculum specialist, will be doing most of it. And she'll provide, along with our representative, some online training. A lot of it will be, it has the same structure as collaborative classroom currently. So implement another section of that resource mirrors a lot of the current resource. Does that make sense? So the training, even though it's for 35, I think that's kind of a standard number they use. But she would basically answer questions, and we don't anticipate a whole lot of training. And actually, we don't anticipate any live training at all.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. So it's kind of just as an as needed, maybe some people who are not as familiar with collaborative classroom. Is that kind of the intent?
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to 1.06, the scoreboard for the JV football facility at Lee Summit High School. So, Mr. Hipple.
Good morning. I just wanted to take this opportunity to talk about the scoreboard. The scoreboard at Lee Summit High School is outdated and does not work. So the replacement of this is the recommendation to send through Daktronics to replace that JV football scoreboard at Lee Summit High School. Are there any questions?
All right, Mr. Hippel, thank you so much. Moving on to 1.07 Nevco backup. Let's see. Also, I guess, Kirk, this is you as well.
Yeah, it is. This is a sole source request. We installed the Nevco scoreboards about 365 days ago at all three of our high school football stadiums and one at the Aquatic Center. This ask is for 3 additional Nevco laptops for students and staff that help create the content and run the video board at the stadium for not only football, but also any events that are hosted at the stadium, soccer, for example, track, Race for the Future, but having a backup laptop in case one, it goes down. But then number 2 also gives the opportunity for students in the classroom as they create the content to go ahead and load the library, if you will, in preparation for whatever event may be at the stadium.
I do have a question on this one.
Okay.
So it certainly makes sense to me to have a backup. Totally understand that if, you know, the one laptop were to fail, having a backup is important. I think where I need a little bit of help is understanding why they are $9,000 a piece. Yeah. And why we can't just buy a regular laptop and install the software.
That is a great question. This is something that I've been told that is a sole source, that the technology that is used is specific to Nevco, and that we don't have any other options is what I've been told.
No, I understand that part.
Yeah.
So I'm a Googler, so I just kind of looked up the display director on Nevco. Yes. And just glancing at the website, it seems like you can buy the software from them and download it onto any old laptop. So that's more my question. Why do we have to buy their $9,000 laptop? And is there a difference in just buying a software subscription for the backup? So that's more my question. I respect that it has to be the software to connect with that specific board. So I was just curious about that.
Yeah, I would love to. I could definitely dive deeper into that for sure. I just and figure out what that does look like regarding this purchase.
And board member S, like we've asked that same question. We've pushed back on Nevco and continue to get the same response that, you know, if we want the software, we have to purchase their laptop as well. But your point is well taken, and I will ask Mr. Hippel to. As well as Dr. Whaley to reach back out to Nevco and see if there are options just to buy the software and to put it on to one of our laptops.
Okay, thanks for looking into that. One more question on this invoice, because I was just curious how this applied to the laptops. So there's a line on here that says a new vinyl for $1,200. Is that related to the laptops, or is this a separate purchase we're making from Nevco for the boards?
That is in regard to the lettering that is at Lee Summit High School Stadium. And so you'll notice that it should be at the end of that or the bottom of that statement that they've credited that back. So it was a line item saying that it was being purchased. However, they credited back the exact amount at the bottom because they are making it right from the original install of the coloring of the Lee Summit letters at their stadium.
Oh, gotcha. They messed it up and had to redo it or something.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Great questions. And we will follow back up with Nevco and then as we move this agenda item to the board, if we are able to modify the cost, we definitely will.
Great, thank you.
Moving on to items 1.08, the ProEd Edmark reading program. Dr. Mathis.
Yes, good morning. This is a product that we have used in our life skills programs for several years in some of our special education classrooms. The materials that are being used right now are outdated, so this really provides an update for that. And also we've added several classrooms over the years in special programs. And so this kind of expands the use of that resource so that consistently, whichever school students attend, if they're in that program, they would have access to this same reading program. It also, a uniqueness to this particular program that is different is that it does provide some functional reading instruction as part of this program, which is one of the things that we would be working through with some of our students served in special programs to provide more functional academic work. Any questions? Oh, I did want to point out that the reason it's kind of in two separate quotes on the PO is because some is teacher materials and the other is student materials.
Dr. Mathis, I did have, just for my own education, I know this is not teaching to the reg ed portion of the population. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So because of that, that's kind of why we are not using the same reading resources that we're using for the rest of our buildings.
So we also have access to the general education curriculum for students where that is appropriate. So the collaborative classroom, for example, at the elementary level for students that do have the skills to be able to use that resource, we would still use that resource. This is a way that we can have an additional instructional resource to provide specially designed instruction for those who need it.
Great, thank you so much.
No problem.
All right, thank you, Dr. Mathis. You started this meeting indicating the agenda had been modified, reordered a little bit, and we have a strong commitment to professional learning for our staff, and we're very happy that a member of our instructional operations team is able to attend that today. And so, they're probably going to jump off to get to those sessions that they've signed up for. So, just really one last opportunity to ask any questions of our instructional operations team. All right, thank you for modifying your schedule this morning, and thank you for attending. Moving on to item 1.09, contracts $15,000 and less. Typical for what we would see this time of year, wrapping up a few things from the end of this last school year, but also then prepping for the start of the school year as we approach that here in the next month or so. Are there any questions about any items that are on this list of 15,000 contracts at $15,000 and less?
I did have a question but it also kind of relates to 1.1 for over 15K, because there's two lines. There's no red ink, and Turnitin is on the over 15K approval list. But my question is related because one, those seem to be duplicating resources to me. So I'm curious why we have them both. But then my second question, specifically pertaining to no red ink, is regarding AI detection additions to that software or resource. I know I saw it on Turnitin. They have the AI detection that's added. No red ink does not. And are they overlapping resources? Why do we have both?
So that's a great question. Thank you. I'm going to call on Dr. Herzog here, since this is coming out of the no red ink is coming out of Lee's Summit North, but also Dr. Whaley in regards to the AI question. So Dr. Herzog.
Sure. So the no red ink at Lee's Summit North, that school has utilized that program for their ELA courses for several years. Their teachers that particular program has a data component that Turnitin does not have, that they're able to utilize to look at data for their students and use that to improve writing, to improve instruction in that area. Dr. Collins has funded that out of his building budget for years. Teachers at the other two schools, West and Lee Summit, have have discussed this, but not gone to the level of Lee Summit North in terms of utilization. There is a good cost to it, so it would have to, in my opinion, the other two schools would have to have the same level of desire to use the data to improve instruction that North does. But there is a difference in the two programs, and Lee Summit North has a plan about how they utilize that to improve their students' writing ability.
So, Dr. Herzog, to Board Member Eslick's point, what ongoing discussion takes place between buildings when we have different resources being used?
So last year, what typically happens is if a school like Lee Summit North, for instance, wants to utilize this, that really came from teachers' desires to utilize it. So the question that was posed last year when this came up was, okay, if the plan at Lee Summit North is to utilize it in this way, teachers at Lee Summit West, what is your plan to utilize this in the same way? And they didn't have a plan at West, Lee Summit, to articulate how they would utilize that and fit it into what they're currently doing. And so their desire was, we're not going to go this route because we don't have a good plan for how we're going to utilize it. If that were the case, if they would utilize it in the same way as North or a similar fashion, then we could certainly look at funding that out of those building budgets in the future. But at this point, those schools have no desire to go that direction.
Very good.
Okay, Dr. Herzog. So what I'm hearing you say is that no red ink and Turnitin, although I think my confusion came from the description that's on the $15,000 and less spreadsheet, specifically refers to plagiarism. And not so much the trying to help students improve their writing skills. So I think that's where my confusion really came from, in that's what I was noticing as the overlap, because I see Turnitin as being something that specifically tries to target students who aren't doing their own work. So, but yeah, I understand that. So thanks for that explanation.
No problem.
Dr. Whaley, in regards to the AI?
Yeah, and we had some brief conversations. So this is kind of coming out of the library, and Dr. Barger jump in too, but Amy Taylor and Melanie Hutchinson and Dr. Barger and I had talked about how we're going to approach AI in the district moving forward. And I know a pretty comprehensive plan is going to be put together as far as getting out in front of it with teachers. When's it appropriate to use AI? When's it not? But this product is more specific to how are we going to defend against kids, typing in, write me a paper on, dogs, and that paper getting cranked out by sites like ChatGPT and things like that. So this add-on to this is going to help, seek out some of those things also to make sure we're guarding against plagiarism through the use of AI. Because AI is pretty good, it can crank out some very unique things, that would be harder to catch without a tool like this.
And I think it's worth noting that this product offered the AI search tool free this past year. And so teachers became accustomed to having it. And then they are now charging for that feature this year. So our decision was to support what the teachers had become accustomed to having by paying the extra for that feature.
Well, I think the AI detection is a great thing. I'm really glad that you're using that. And this is just a comment, but AI, I'm sure you've thought about this, and I look forward to further future conversations, but I'm curious how the district will have those conversations with our staff as well about using AI from a staff perspective, because AI can also be used to grade. It can take input and actually give feedback. So I'm curious what those conversations will look like in the future. But it's all new technology, so I know it's going to be evolving as we go.
Well, and actually not too far in the future, actually, we have that team that Dr. Whaley mentioned is developing a 30-minute online Schoology-based course for all staff of students. We're thinking probably grades 4 and up, focused on the pros and the cons, the effective ways to use it instructionally, and then some of the negative implications, as well as the ways to prevent student data breaches and so forth. So we're getting ahead of it with a required training for all of our staff, both from a safety standpoint, but also from a let's use it productively and essentially not put our heads in the sand, but instead talk about how we use something productively while honoring safeguards as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Board Member Eslick, did that address your questions regarding no red ink and as well as the
Yes.
other item? Okay.
Yes, yes,
Great.
that helps. Thank you.
Any other items on the list of contracts under 15,000? All right, moving on to item 1.10, contracts over 15,000. As a reminder, this list contains new contracts, renewals, change orders, and a number of these contracts will be discussed in greater detail as we go throughout the meeting. If it's a renewal and there's no change in cost or the increase in cost is under the CPI, we don't go in to any great depth and discussion with it. But if it's a new contract or a renewal over with an increase over the CPI, we will discuss that in greater detail later on. Are there any questions regarding anything that's on that list that's not on the agenda later or that's already been discussed? All right. Thank you. Moving on to item 1.11, Converge One, the phone system. Dr. Whaley.
And I'm actually going to turn that over to Mrs. Wooderson to talk about those two items.
Good morning. The district's working with Converge One to replace the district's phone system as approved in March of 2023. When the initial approval went through, we were still working through some mobile device needs for users that are not stationary at desks. This is a change order related to professional services for the implementation of the wireless device that we have finally chosen to leverage for those users.
All right, Ms. Wooderson, thank you. Moving on to 1.12.
All right, so this is another change order related to the Converge One replacement of the district's phone system. In the past, buildings have had the ability to dial a code to integrate between the phone system and the intercom system to make all calls or call straight into rooms. The technology that we utilize for that is not compatible with the new system. Since the original project was approved, we were able to get to an updated solution to continue to provide this functionality. Usable life of this solution is going to be 5 years. At that time, the manufacturer will be back in the same place if they're no longer supporting the hardware on the phone system side. Cost of this includes the hardware, some licensing, maintenance for 5 years, as well as the professional services to help us get the installation completed.
Board Member Johnson and Eslick, you may recall when we brought this agenda item, the phone system replacement to the board, I believe it was last month, maybe 2 months ago, there were questions about the phone system and the intercom system and how they interplay. And as Mrs. Wooderson mentioned, we didn't have, and there wasn't really a solution to allow the phone system to, I'll say, interact effectively and efficiently with the intercom system. Through a lot of hard work, they were able to find this solution, and it provides a great deal of convenience for our building staff, but also it addresses some safety and security desires that we have in the district to be able to communicate quickly throughout any of our campuses. So anyway, just moving on. Any questions regarding this agenda item? All right, Mrs. Wooderson, thank you so much. Moving on to 1.13, Ms. McMillan.
Good morning. So the district uses a third-party administrator to administer our Section 125 plan, our flexible spending accounts, and then our health reimbursement arrangements or HRA accounts. So this service is due for an RFP for the plan year beginning January 1st. So the RFP was completed. The team is recommending to continue with Surency. Surency is maintaining the current rate at $3.40 per member per month. So the team, each team member, the RFP process recommended that we continue with Surency. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, Mrs. McMillan, thank you so much. Moving on to 1.14, food safety and sanitation system, Mrs. Dinella. All right, Mrs. Dinella, can you hear me?
There, sorry, I didn't unmute.
That's okay.
We have been purchasing all of our chemicals and dishwashing detergents and everything we use in the kitchens from Ecolab. And it seems that they have, their company has gotten bigger and they are focusing a lot on international sales. And the customer service we had been receiving had really dropped, and we were concerned about the length of service calls, how long it took to get them out when we needed them. So we started looking at some different companies, and we found a company that is called SFS Pack, and they specialize in environmentally friendly chemicals for specific school kitchens, and they belong to a co-op. So we received co-op pricing from them, and we will be assigned a tech, and she will be on a 30-day rotation. She will go into all the schools, and she will deliver all of their chemicals so we can free up some spaces in our warehouse and we won't have as much tied up in inventory. And she will also do inspections that I will receive once a month to see if we need to work on any safety and sanitation in the kitchens. And we just felt this was a good move for us because it's so important. We deal with high risk, the population, so they have a great program, and we feel this will benefit us. Any questions?
I did have a question just about how this company and the contract and what they are doing compares to the service that Ecolab was delivering prior to looking at this company. Were they doing the same services? Is this going to be an additional service for additional funding? What's the comparison, I guess, there?
In the past, we only purchased the chemicals and they came through US Foods. We had a district, a region tech assigned to our district, but we did not have any calls that were set up. They were supposed to come every quarter. Some of the schools didn't see them at all school year. And when we had to call the 800 number, it might be 2 or 3 days before we saw them come. And if you have a dishwasher down and the chemicals aren't working, then we have to stop using it because the health inspector could shut us down. So we would have to use 3 compartment sinks. This new company, they provide training for all of their chemicals. They come every 30 days. They bring the product. They make sure all the equipment is running. They install their own equipment. So we're ensured that our sanitizers are at 200 parts per million all the time. And they provide training books and all the information we need. So we're getting a lot more from this company than we got from Ecolab. Ecolab alone, we would spend close to $50,000 a year just on chemicals. So I feel what we're getting in return, having a site tech visit every school every 30 days is just a huge improvement.
It sounds like that is the case. Thank you for giving me that additional information in comparison. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Right. Thank you. Mrs. Dinella, I believe this is yours as well, 1.15.
Sure. Nutrition Services puts out a produce bid every year to service all 27 schools. They currently deliver to every school on Monday. And this year we put the bid out to Liberty, Lafredo, and CNC Produce. And we only received a bid from CNC. There's still a shortage of drivers. And when you have a district this large, it's really hard to guarantee 9 a.m. deliveries. So we want to award the bid to CNC. And we also put language in the bid this year that we could renew if the prices were, staying according to the market prices. So we also get our DoD, Department of Defense produce from them, and I allot about $200,000 from commodities to
CNC because they are the Missouri vendor for DOD. And I have verbiage in the contract that it's not an exclusive contract, and they agreed to that, so we can still purchase local farm vegetables and fruits from KC Food Hub. Any questions?
Mrs. Dinella, thank you. And then moving on to section 2, which is also going to be a topic for you to address, 2023-2024 meal price increase.
We are requesting to increase our meal prices by 10 cents at the elementary level and the secondary level. We want to keep our breakfast prices the same. We have a tool that USDA puts out, the meal equity tool, and we actually could raise our meals 20 cents, but we felt that would be hard on parents. We saw large negative balances this year and parents is struggling. So we chose to just go with the 10-cent increase and carry it over for next year. Any questions?
Mrs. Dinella, you mentioned breakfast prices. So the breakfast prices will remain the same, or they'll go up a
The
dime?
breakfast prices will remain the same.
So the $1.80 and $1.90 was what we charged last year.
Yes,
Okay.
that was last year's prices.
But the lunch prices are going to go from $2.80 to $2.90 or from $3 to $3.10.
Correct.
Okay.
Any questions?
All right, Mrs. Nell, thank you so much for your time
Thank
this
you.
morning. Moving on to section 3, facilities. Mr. Gorell.
Thank you. I have 4 items today that we'll run through. The first item, 3.01, is the annual renewal of the facility use fee schedule. This is required by board policy KG. We have an ongoing quality focus team that reviews items related to outside users using our buildings. And the only change we've made this year is adjustment to the wages, to the hourly costs of having custodial cover these events related to our recent wage increases. We also adjusted the security cost and are now putting in the cost for Lee's Summit Police Department to cover security if we deem that that's necessary. Also included are the fee schedules for the Aquatic Center and Missouri Innovation Campus. Both of those are managed independently by those sites. I do know that the Aquatic Center contains the last year of a previously approved 4-year process of increasing their lane fees. And so there was a minor adjustment there, and I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have them.
All right, Mr. Gorell, thank you. Moving on to your next item, 3.02.
Okay. This item is related to the ongoing maintenance of our district's elevators. We have 33 various elevators and chairlifts in the district that all have code required testing. This contract is through Schindler Elevator. The total annual cost is about $52,000 that comes out of the facilities budget. This is an increase of about $10,000 over our previous contract, but they are covering all of our basic component replacement. And we feel like from what we've spent historically, that this is going to be a much better deal for us, for them to just be there and replace basic components as they fail. The other part of this contract that we're going to take advantage of is that they can install cell dialers on each of our elevators for our communication method, and also monitor that device. So this will allow us to get rid of I believe, what are about the last remaining POTS lines in the district. And so that is also a cost savings for what we pay over those hard phone lines. So I'll be glad to answer any questions. All right, so I'll move on to the next item. Our district's long-range capital plan has Bernard Campbell Middle School as the next school needing mechanical system replacement. We have a $4 million budget established in our capital budget for this fiscal year. If you remember, 2 months ago, we awarded an on-call contract with Henderson Engineering. And this is a project-specific contract. You'll see the AIA contract that will allow them to administer that project through design, bidding, and construction for us. So this project will replace all of the air handling units, all of the central equipment at Campbell, and it is original to the building. It has had a good life. So I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Gurrell, earlier this year in a board meeting, we discussed the supply availability of equipment, and you mentioned that there was months and months delay on some of our equipment. Are you still seeing that, or have we seen an improvement in supply?
We have seen an improvement in quite a few areas. There still is some difficulty. Certain types of mechanical equipment have come way back. It is still a little bit unpredictable, but we've recently ordered a replacement rooftop unit that was a 16-week lead time instead of 52 weeks. We've also ordered some roofing materials recently that are a pretty short lead item where, previously we were waiting almost a year for roofing. So it is improving, but still a little bit unpredictable.
Very good. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. The last item is the bond budget update. That's included for reference. It is, no major changes from the previous month. So I'll just be glad to answer any questions if you've had time to review that.
And just quickly, how are the projects coming this summer?
Projects are going well. This is our last crazy summer. There is a lot going on across the district.
Yes.
Last crazy summer of this bond issue anyway. Lee Summit High is wrapping up. There's still going to be some cleanup to do early fall, but we're going to have all the kids in classrooms at Lee Summit High, which is a super exciting project. The other projects are all doing well too, and no unanticipated delays.
Very good. All right. Thank you. Moving on to section 4, finance, Mr. Holder.
Good morning, everyone. We had the first item that we have here is for a purchasing card vendor. Our current agreement that spanned the period of 5 years is running out. And so a couple of months ago, we put out an RFP. We had a very good response to that RFP. We had 8 vendors total that responded. And from that, we had put a group together to look at those proposals, and we narrowed those down to 4 vendors. And then we invited 4 vendors to come in. They gave an hour-plus long demonstration. We had some question and answer. It was a full day, so very much appreciate those team members from technology, purchasing, academic services, our secondary building. They gave up a full day to go through those, but it was very valuable because looking at a purchasing card proposal on paper is one thing, but being able to see the actual functionality, because a lot of the P card is the user has to input data after the use, and then the approver has to go into the system and approve it. And so we are recommending to award this to UMB Bank. This would be a change, but there's really 3 items that stood out as it related to UMB Bank. One was the rebate that we get. There's a possibility for a small increase with the rebate. The functionality of the system for both our users and our approvers really blew the committee away. And I think of the 3 was the one that was really the top reason. And then the third one was also a unique feature to UMB in that there's an app that individuals can use to upload receipts. And along with that, the functionality of the system, it allows the approvers to view those receipts in a very easy manner. So for those reasons, we are recommending that the district move forward with UMB Bank. just to note, there's no cost to this for the district, but it will be a process of, the changeover will take a couple months for that to happen. So we would anticipate by October 1st that this would be in place. Any questions on the purchasing card vendor?
Mr. Holder, I do want to make a comment. Board members, you may recall, especially Board Member Eslick, when our auditor provided the report earlier this year, one of the areas that our auditor asked us to address were the number of P cards, purchasing cards within our district. And we just want you to know, Mr. Holder, and I want you to know that, as we move forward with this transition, we're looking to address that issue within this transition. So we take those auditors' responses and comments very seriously, and this is an opportunity for us to address that, as well as, but also balancing out the functionality and the of having the purchasing cards. All right, moving on to 1.02, transfer of funds.
So this item is typically in June. You'll notice that the transfer is a little bit higher than it normally would be, but as compared to the last 11 months, at least, but a little bit lower than it would be for a normal June. So we have, we're asking for the transfer of $7,656,043.47, and this would cover the expenses that we need in the special revenue fund to make sure that that has an even fund balance at the end of the school year. All right. We have the traditional items here on the treasurer's report and the payment of bills. And then at the end, I also included an end of year estimate that mirrors what was presented in June. At least the format mirrors what was presented in June for our end of fiscal year 23. But let's go ahead and start with our revenue and expense report. This is our familiar report that we have every month. And so this is our preliminary end to the school year. So where we anticipated revenues and expenses would be and where those items ended up. So, and you'll notice when we get down to the end with the end of year expense estimate, we came out very, very close in totality to what we presented in June. As being those final ending fund balances. If we want to look at revenues first, just if you look at the operating fund and the special revenue fund, we were over in operating, a little bit under in special revenue, but overall very close, 99.73%. As you look at revenue and expenses, I know I've mentioned this several times in the last few months, but when we amend for expenses, we amend to not exceed. We don't amend to actual. So we try to make sure that we have enough in the budget that we do not exceed that by June 30th. So as a result, to try to get a little bit close, we have to be very tight in our estimates, but also usually put a little bit more in what we would estimate for revenue. Because if I'm conservative, really conservative on revenue and really conservative on expenses, what I present in June will look a lot different when we actually close out in July. So still really pretty close. And just a reminder that we did not get our Part B money as anticipated. That was about $750,000. And we also had a little food service revenue that we did not receive. And then initially, we also had some ARP IDEA money that we thought we might request in FY23, but we decided to request all that in FY24. So we will receive all those revenues, but they'll come in this current fiscal year, post July 1. Debt service, extremely close. Bond, a little bit under. The reason for that is we have a term investment that actually expires in July. It expires here in 5 days, I think, next Monday. And that will add about $110,000 of interest to the bond fund. So, but that won't hit until this fiscal year. Capital projects, the reason that is lower than what we estimated for revenue, and what I would call significantly lower, I mean, just over 7%, but is because of that not receiving that Part B payment this fiscal year. So the way we will address that next year is we'll just increase our anticipated transfer from Fund 1 to Fund 4. So then at the end of the day, it will wash out by the end of FY24. But that revenue estimate is lower because we weren't able to transfer as much as we wanted to into Fund 4. Or actually not transfer, we adjusted the M&M revenue that we had going into Fund 4. Moving over to the far right, looking at our nutrition services fund activity and foundation, as well as before and after school services, you can see again, very tight on our food service revenue, very close to what was estimated, a little bit over in the activity and the foundation. And then before and after school services, again, we received about 97% of what we anticipated. So then moving down to the expense line, you can see that in our two major funds, our operating fund and our special revenue fund, again, we tried to get as close as possible, and we, I think, accomplished that goal. In total, 99.79% of what was budgeted. Debt service, again, very close. That's one that we know by June what expenses will be there. So we tend to get very, very close on that one. The bond fund, you'll notice that I want to point this out. We're a little bit under. There was a little bit of intentionality there because as we got towards the end of June, we realized that our capital projects fund, we might exceed that a little bit. So, and as you can see under capital projects fund, we did exceed that by about $136,000, a little less than that. But remember, as bond fund and capital projects fund, the way that we look at that with fund, that is all Fund 4 as it translates to our annual school board report. So it's okay to be a little bit over in one as long as you're enough under in the other side of that. The same thing really applies to as we go over and look at our restricted funds, nutrition services, as well as our activity and foundation. And then BASS, we were a little bit under. All those funds roll into either Fund 1, 2, or 4. And so, again, as long as across the board we are under there, then we should be in good shape. And so that allows, as we'll see here in a few minutes, the combination of those things allowed us to get very, very close to what we presented in June for our ending fund balance. Just going down to the bottom right corner, again, our nutrition services fund improved. We did have the payment last July, so going back 12 months ago, that was a late payment from the state. So that did help our revenues this year. That was kind of an anomaly, but still a good situation where we improved that fund balance for this year. Activity and the foundation fund, that really kind of remarkable that that's within 8,000 of each other. And again, those funds are going to fluctuate up and down a little bit as we go through the year, but very close to how we ended last fiscal year. And then BASS is up a little bit in terms of being in the negative. That is primarily due to two things. One, we received a rescue funds payment last June, not June of 23, but in June of 22, that helped bring that balance down a little bit. And then we also had, when we had our true up last December, as you know, that was a little higher than we anticipated. But we do definitely expect BASS to continue to make headway there. Most recently, we have, as we complete that transition with the YMCA, I believe as of the middle of August, we'll have 13 employees. They're still LSR7 employees as part of that before and after school program. And moving over to the far left, you'll just notice the current fund balance. Remember, for the purposes of this report, we're just looking at operating and special revenue there. So close to 33% in that operating, and an increase of just over $2.75 million as it compares to last year in that fund. And so overall, very pleased with how we ended the year. My second year of doing this, was able to get those estimates a lot tighter. Still, still out of my comfort zone a little bit when it comes to making those estimates, making sure that we don't exceed, but in much better place this year than I was 12 months ago. Any questions on the revenue and expense report? All right, let's move on to the investment report next. Just a couple things I want to highlight there. We have, if you look at the top, really, and what I'm focused on is those coupon rates. So about the fifth column over, you'll notice that there's a standout there, a treasury bill. We got a short-term treasury bill that we purchased back in the spring as kind of a bridge for a plan to take advantage of some of these larger items that are coming due. And so if you look at the coupon rate and maturity dates, we just have a lot of opportunity in the next 3 months to exceed those earnings rates. The 4.88 is the outlier, but that was the short-term bridge. And then you look at what's coming off with everything below 50 basis points until we get down to the treasury that expires on September 30th. Then we get back into 1.3745. Then we see those CDs in October and November that are all 3.45, 3.55. And we go over and look at the purchase date, and we can see that that was 5 years ago. So the good news is, even with those higher returns for investments that were performing very well for us, for 48 of those 60 months, we'll actually be able to beat those returns once we reinvest that. The last thing I just wanted to point it out, if you want to go down to the very bottom of this sheet, please, Hannah, you'll notice that we did recently reinvest a CD, and we purchased it for 4 years. As I've mentioned before, we can lock in shorter term, and you'll notice that our average maturity is less than 2 years if you look at when all of our investments expire here. And so one of the things, though, that we don't want to get too short with our average maturities. And so when we can capture a good 4 or 5 year rate, we will start to mix those in just for some protection moving forward, especially when you're looking at, maybe a 4% spread. Even though we could get a little higher return if we take a shorter term investment, trying to look at it over that 5 year span. And so we'll continue to mix those in. We will still take some shorter 2 and 3 year investments to get that higher yield, but we'll start to get a little bit out there 27, 28, so we can have just a little bit of protection in case interest rates start to go down over the next 12 to 18 months. Any questions on the investment report? All right. Next is our balance sheet. Really what I wanted to highlight on the balance sheet is when you look at that fund balance adjustment line, which is normally we talk about fund balance adjustment, we're talking about the amount that we're transferring from Fund 1 to Fund 2, that we do that every month, that it is required. But at the end of the year, June 30th, this also shows what we're transferring into our capital projects fund for Fund 4. And then this month, we also have a unique one in that our activity fund will actually go up just over $500,000. The reason for that is we are zeroing out the 3 high school athletic balances that have built up over the course of more than a decade. This goes back over 2 decades. Over a decade ago, that we would try to use gate money from athletics as well as beverage contract money to offset any of the budgets for supplies and purchase services as it came to athletics and activities. And so in theory, that worked 10 years ago. Now, it wasn't meant for salaries or benefits or anything like that, but it was for the supplies of what it takes to run those programs. So again, if you go back 15 or 20 years, that was not a bad decision, not a bad philosophy really at all. But the problem that we've run into really over the last decade, and this predates pretty much most of us that are here, is one, the budget for athletics has stayed the same in those high schools for a decade. And as you can imagine, costs have not stayed the same over the last 10 years. The other big problem that we encountered is 10 or 15 years ago, the beverage contracts that schools would receive, especially a school district the size of ours, at least Summit, were significant. We're talking 6 figures. Those have went away because of the new requirements that came in with the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act and some of the requirements about selling items in school, particularly as it relates to soda. So as a result, those revenue streams dried up. We still had the gate revenue, and some years would come fairly close, depending on how many home games we have, the weather for outdoor activities, all those things. But essentially, we developed a pattern where we were continuing to add, and those balances we weren't make those whole, and that we would take care of those out of our budgeting process. And so all the revenue will come in into our regular general revenue. Expenses will go out of our general expenses. Those don't need to be in the activity because we were truing it up every year, and basically we were just moving those funds on paper, and really we just felt like it was right to have them where they belong in the general fund. So the net result on our ASBR will be 0 because remember, all these restricted funds come in as part of our fund balance on the ASBR. But as it's reflected in our fund balances, you can see that on the balance sheet of about 77.2 million. And then all of our restricted funds will actually go up. So the net result in terms of impact on our fund balances, there is none. It's nil. But I just wanted to highlight that as something that we took care of at the end of this fiscal year. Any questions related to that? I apologize for that. That was more of a lengthy explanation, but I felt like we needed it was worth the time to explain that. Okay, our last item is the end of year estimate. I do want to mention that it is important to note this is still an estimate. We are completing our ASBR. That's due August 15th. Our auditors will come in the last week of September. They will make sure that everything is placed appropriately according to fund. And the one outlier that sometimes that we try to account for by the end of June is those capital expenses in the restricted funds. And primarily that's our food service. And we've really tried to be cognizant of improving and making sure that our equipment rotation is up to date in our nutrition services department. And so obviously that requires some expenses. And so you can see that capital outlay there in restricted of just over $724,000. When that comes out on the ASBR, again, that's just fund. It's not going to change our total expenses, but it sometimes can adjust our fund balance a little bit. But I just wanted to highlight here, we presented in June that our ending fund balance would be 32.63%. And we were very, very close with that estimate. It ended up at 32.66. Even with some of the variables that we faced with not anticipating certain revenues or anticipating certain revenues that we would receive. And we had to make a little bit of an adjustment there, as you can see with the capital projects ending fund balance, but that still went up significantly. So again, another year of doing this. We feel good about the fact that what we presented in June and where we will likely actually end up is very, very close, within 0.03%. So, and again, this is just a reflection of exactly what you saw with the revenue and expense report for June, but this breaks it out for the entire year, and then also has a little bit more detail about where that revenue came, where the actual expenses came from, and as it relates to what we presented in June. So we will move forward and look forward to, again, completing our ASBR, as well as when the auditor comes in. And then ultimately, we'll update this in the form of the ASBR review when the audit is finished. But I would anticipate these balances being very, very close. The total fund balance should not change, what you see over on the far right, except as it relates to the bond, because we will obviously spend that down. But the funds, the only thing that should really change is if there's any movement between the fund balances, but the total should remain the same. Any questions on that?
All right, Mr. Older, great job. Just to highlight something that you said, this is an estimate. Our ASBR, the annual secretary to the board report, will be submitted to DESE by August 15th. That kind of gets us a little closer to, final numbers. And then, of course, we go through the audit process, and then really FY23 becomes really final once the audit is done, and the ASBR then is probably then again updated or amended. So by the time we get to December, January, when the audit report is provided by our auditor, FY23 then will be complete, and everything will be finalized. So great report, and as you can see, we're in a strong financial position as a district, so we're doing well. Moving on to section 5, future items. Hannah, if you would, please open up that document. And just to kind of, once again, peek around the corner and see what's coming. As you can tell, in August, we have, hopefully we'll be bringing forward bus purchases, construction estimating services, architectural services, section 125 HRA administration. Actually, maybe if we addressed that this month. And of course, then our Google Suite vendor renewal, and then dental, vision, life, and disability employment insurance plan. So you can kind of see those things that are going to be coming here in the month of August, and then moving forward September as well. So once again, this is just a document to kind of give everyone a chance to look at the agenda items that we anticipate coming in the coming months. Moving on to item 5.02, summer 2023 projects. We provided this list back in, I believe, maybe May, and I know our facilities and our vendors and our contractors have all been working hard to complete these projects. Mr. Gurrell, I know you're attending crisis response training. Is there anything though that you would like to highlight off of this?
Not specifically. I could just mention too that this is fiscal year 24 budgeted work, and we do try to get as much as we can done this first part of the summer. But through the breaks of the school year and even the first part of next summer, there are a few things we'll finish up. This summer we're probably 75% done with all the flooring on this list right now. Our paving will start this week. We've got about $1 million worth of paving on the list that will be underway, and the The painting also is nearly complete. Those are the items that are really hard to get done once school starts. So we try to get them knocked out early. So thank you. I'll be glad to answer any questions on specific projects if anybody has them.
All right, Mr. Gurrell, thank you so much. We know we've come to the end of our agenda. I'm always impressed with our staff. I'm always just always amazed at how large and complex our school district is, and you can see that from the academic side to the operations side, there's a lot going on, and all of it in support of our students, in support of our staff, to ensure that we have a outstanding educational experience for our students, and then supporting our staff to make that happen for our kids. Board Member Eslick, is there anything that you would like to ask before we end our meeting?
Nope, I think the team did a great job. I think I've asked all my questions.
All right, very good. Well, if there's anything, please let us know, and we will adjourn our Finance Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.